Hey guys, it's Rachel. It is Thankful Thursday and I'm dressed like this, like I feel like all wrapped up warm because I have just been out with Louis. It's actually really hot in here now. So anyway, I am here this week and it is the last week of the rota that Jen put together. And so we are looking at something that I've not really thought about that much. And it's to do with looking at our illness as a metaphor, which is something I never did, and it might be something you do, and I know there's a lot of people who do it, and I've always referred to my eating disorder as my eating disorder, my anorexia, my depression, my self-injury, but I've never named any of them. And I've certainly never named my eating disorder. I know some people do name their eating disorder. I'm just going to tilt this a tiny bit for you because then you can just, yeah. I know some people do name their eating disorders or see it as a separate entity. And when I was reflecting on talking about this topic this evening, I thought about how I've related my experiences to poetry, and especially maybe quite a common one, but Sylvia Plath. I struggled with really when my eating disorder was at its worst, my depression was at its worst, and whilst I've had depressive periods, never as longly or as intensely as the depressive period I endured in the summer of 2002, which basically left me bedbound for about 3 months. I did leave my bed, I did leave my bedroom, barely washed though. I would be dragged to appointments, so kind of jeans over pyjamas when I had to do my walking or whatever, and that was when I started to really relate to poetry and to song lyrics. And when I was taken into hospital in the autumn of 2002, I didn't really talk, I didn't really do anything, and I was suddenly thrown into a place where not only did I have to eat obviously, but where I had structure. So it would be getting up at 8 o'clock and getting in the shower and, you know, getting dressed and eating, and my day being structured around eating and when the meals were, and around when I would have certain therapy. Which obviously was a complete shock to the system, and it didn't happen overnight. Medication, I can still now struggle with insomnia, complete insomniac when I was taken into hospital, hadn't slept properly for I don't know how long. Certainly when I was in, you know, locked in my bedroom, I didn't sleep. Certainly didn't sleep at night. And what I was given was art therapy, because everybody was kind of aware of how little skills I had to communicate what was going on for me. And when I was put into art therapy, it's hard to maybe think about me now if you think about kind of the kind of happiness and stuff that you've seen over the years from me. But I was literally a shadow, and I didn't have anything to say, and I sort of was sat like this, head down, always had a hat, hoodie up, you know, that kind of thing. And I went into art therapy, and I was lucky enough to work with an art therapist who was amazing, absolutely amazing. And my metaphors, as such, came from that work with her, and it's only now thinking back about it that I can see it in that way. I started to draw, I actually painted, and what I began to paint was an eye in the corner of the paper, and I remember it very distinctly. And I started to draw this eye, and in this eye it was always in the corner, there was like dark rays coming from it, and I always felt like that something was with me, or something was following me. And that links back to when I was saying about poetry, and I was thinking about the Sylvia Plath poem, In Plaster, and how she very much relates to something being with her, and her having the life sucked out of her, and it almost being given to the thing that is with her. And when I was drawing this eye, and I started to draw waves, and they represented the waves of my depression, because I didn't just get depressed. My depression through 2002 did worsen, Louis, did worsen, and it was kind of up and down. I'd have a period where I'd just be so utterly depressed, and then I would cope. And so, you know, coping would represent maybe being able to go to work a couple of times a week, see people, talk to people, interact. Certainly not constantly be in my room. Depressed periods would be not being able to get out of bed, barely functioning, barely even acknowledging that a day had passed. Hang on, I just need to. And it was in waves, and so I would have these blue waves and then have this eye on me. And as those sorry, Louis is having a mad moment. As those images evolved, the classes that I was having, I started to, as the depression broke down, the eating disorder issues were able to be explored and expressed. And that's not to say that my eating disorder wasn't with me. My eating disorder was with me. And so as you had these waves, I started to draw these like pink circles. I'm sorry, this is the noise you can hear. He looks like a demon. He is being a kangaroo. Isn't it? Is this what you do? And Mummy is going to kill you because you're on there without a cushion, aren't you? Yes, there's no cushion, and your treat. Go and take it onto the bed. Oh, sorry. Anyway, Louis, come get it. It's over here. Come get it. And I started to draw these pink circles. And again, as the classes went on, I was asked kind of what they represented. And maybe a lot of people do this, but I was like, they're my eating. That's me. I'm this round pink thing, which became a pig. And so it was almost like there were these waves, which was my depression, and these round circles on them, which basically meant that even in the lows and highs, my anorexia was a constant issue. So whether I was feeling good, out with my friends, doing whatever, I still had my eating disorder. If I was laying in bed and I couldn't think of anything, I still had my eating disorder. And those classes really, really helped me and gave me words, and I would take those to my therapist. Or something I used to do was jot down what the art therapist had said to me, or the conversations we'd had, the dialogue we'd had, reflect on it myself after. And those pictures then became, you know, how do you see yourself with your illness? And it was very much these round pink circles, and then the world, and then I would have these other ones, so I'd feel like I knew there were other people out there with the illness, but I felt completely isolated. I barely knew anybody at that point with an eating disorder, and that was how it became to see that I was very alone in all of it. And when I was in treatment the first time, it wasn't an eating disorder unit. They had eating disorder patients. They had one boy, and well, he was probably a similar age to me. I was 21, and there was another late girl, but she left and was sent somewhere else. So there were people around me who understood. My family were incredibly understanding. My self-harm at that point had escalated, and so it was really unraveling all of that, and how I saw myself, and how I perceived myself, how I perceived my surroundings, how I felt. I would draw boxes, a cage that I would feel very trapped in, that people would be saying things, but all I was this person who wanted to hurt herself. You know, my anorexia was at its worst at that point. That hospitalisation, my depression was at its worst, and my self-harm was at its worst. And you know, when you're sat there and you weigh next to nothing, and you don't want to be alive, and you're planning how to get out and you're self-harming every 20 minutes, you don't have any words. You don't have a way of saying what is going on. And this is maybe where Jen's idea of a metaphor comes in. And so mine were these drawings, mine were this representation of a cage and me being stuck in it. And I used to often have in my head, like, I almost felt like I was floating above everybody else, and everyone was trying to talk to me and tell me what to do, and it was like their hands were grasping for me but they just couldn't reach me, or they were trying to reach into me but nothing, everything just bounced off me. And it often felt also that it was almost as though the world was flat and that I was in the middle of it, and that like if I moved I might go off the edge, and if I didn't move I would just stay here. And it was this constant dichotomy in my head between wanting to move, which would, you know, move anything, and staying the same because I was so scared. So that's kind of what I came up for. I don't really have a metaphor for my recovery either. I don't have that many memories of when I first started to recover, and all I know is that I made up my mind that I was going to recover, and I guess the rest has come from there, and it has been about just fighting to get well and actually doing whatever that takes. And when I was recovering, because my depression was still pretty intense, I did used to go like walking. I live in the middle of nowhere, and it took a while for me to be able to do things like go walking, but I did do things like go walking, and I sometimes, it's going to sound punishing but it wasn't, I would sometimes walk when it was like snowing and like it was really heavy and it was really windy, and I would just literally walk up the hill opposite me, which is like maybe a 10-15 minute walk, and I would almost feel like if I could do this, if I could fight through this, if I could walk up this, that I was fighting my depression. And whilst I didn't have the nagging voice of an eating disorder, it was very much about pressing through, charging through something. And that's how I've seen my recovery, that it's about going and going, and even when everything is so hard, when that wind is in your face and you don't think you can take another step, that you go. And what you tend to find is pushing yourself in recovery. That was just an example of one thing I did. I'm not saying go out there and walk, you know, up a hill when it's like -10 to feel of something, but it was like I was breaking barriers, and emotionally that knocked down barriers, and I would get in and it would be like, whoa, you know, and it would feel like I'd achieved something. One other thing that I blogged about, and I'll put the link at the bottom of this video, is to do with the bungee jump I did in South Africa. It was the highest bungee jump in the world, and I did a whole post on that. So what I will do is link you to that, and I will basically say that given that I've done the highest bungee jump in the world, which was when I was in my recovery, because it was 2005 and I started to recover at the beginning of 2004, even though I was first in hospital in 2002, that it was very much, if I've been able to recover this far, I can jump off this, do this bungee jump, and that in life, if I could do that bungee jump, I can do this. And I've got a lot going on at the moment that could potentially push me down, and you know what, I'm not going to give up without a fight. I'm so knackered, it is just unreal. You can probably see, can you see, with my scrapings of makeup? But you know, you just have to hang in there, and you just have to keep going, because it is worth it, and life is hard, but you deserve to have a life, and you deserve to have a good life. And so I'm going to leave that now, and I will see you next week, guys. Okay, bye.